testing is a vital part of adding chemicals to your pool. You need to know what chemicals you need and how much you need to add. So testing is a vital part of that. We need to talk just a little bit about what makes a good water sample. If you're going to test your water, you need to go elbow deep into the pool to get a water sample, away from your return jets. You don't want to grab water that comes from right in front of the return jet because it's been chemically treated and it will skew your results a little bit. So elbow deep away from your return jet. You can test at home periodically. You should test at home periodically, maybe once or twice a week, just to make sure that you've got chlorine in the water and everything looks okay. But then we recommend at least at a minimum of once a month. You bring your water into your dealer in order to have it professionally tested with our Alex water testing software. That will give you a deep dive into what's going on with your pool, and it will give you the best prescription for what needs to happen in order to keep that pool well balanced. Why do we balance our pools? It's important for a lot of different reasons. The first reason being you want your swimmers to be comfortable. So while people are using the pool, you want to make sure their eyes don't hurt and their skin doesn't get itchy and things along those lines. But on top of that, you also are trying to protect your equipment. You don't want to have to replace equipment often because your water balance, it caused damage to it. You can see in this top picture here, that's actually the inside of a heater that got eaten up because the pH in the pool was too low. That's a lot of damage, an expensive part to fix, and it simply could have been avoided if you balance the pool and keep the pH where it's supposed to be. Water balance also contributes to water clarity and how effective your chlorine is that you're putting into the pool. So lots of good reasons why we want to keep water balanced, which leads us back to why we test our water so often. To talk about water balance, we talk about some very specific water balance parameters. pH, alkalinity, calcium hardness, those are the big three that we're going to talk about balancing, why we balance them and why they're important. If you pair that with total dissolved solids, which is just how much stuff that gets left behind in your pool, it all factors into something called the saturation index. Now, we're not going to dig into any great detail in here, but what that means is your pH, your alkalinity, and your calcium hardness all work together to make sure that your pool is neither corrosive or scale forming. We want it to be neutral, we want it to be balanced, and we want it to stay clean and clear. And these are the factors that contribute to that. Let's start with a look at pH. So pH is important for a couple of different reasons. One, if your pH is out of balance, your chlorine doesn't work as well as it should. So we want to make sure your chlorine is as efficient as it should be. The other thing about pH is it can really affect the comfort of your swimmers. Your eyes can get red, things along those lines if the pH is out of balance. Have you ever seen a kid that's been in the pool all day long? He's been swimming around, diving for whatever kids dive for these days. I used to dive for pennies, but now it's some sort of GPS-enabled dive stick or something along those lines. But you see a kid that's been in the pool all day, probably swimming with his eyes open, and he gets out and he looks at you and his eyes are bright red. You think, wow, the chlorine did that. 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, it's the pH that causes that problem. So it's definitely something we want to keep well balanced. The bad thing about pH is, if you say what causes pH to change in a pool, the short answer is everything can cause pH to change in a pool. So that makes it a little more difficult to keep it balanced and in the range we want it to be in. In order to keep pH where we want it to be, because we want our swimmers to be comfortable and our equipment to be protected, we rely on something called total alkalinity. And what total alkalinity does, its only job is to buffer or help balance the pH. So all the things that would otherwise cause pH to change, rain, swimmers, chemicals, algae growth, whatever that might be, total alkalinity absorbs the impact of that. So things that would, if they were able to cause pH to bounce all over the place and cause you a problem with water balance, the total alkalinity absorbs all of that. pH stays the same, alkalinity gets eaten up a little bit in the process, but your pH stays where you want it to be. So if you're balancing your total alkalinity the way you should be, keeping an eye on it, then that is what's helping keep your pH where it's supposed to be. The best analogy I can give for that is like shocks on a car. If you've ever gone down a bumpy road in a car that doesn't have good shock absorbers, you know how it feels. You bounce all over the place, it hurts your back. It's a very uncomfortable ride. If you go down the same road with a car that has really good shock absorbers, you're on the same road, it has the same bumps, but the ride is a lot more even, it's a lot smoother, and you don't bounce all over the place. So total alkalinity is like shock absorbers for a car. It keeps pH from bouncing all over this place. All the same contaminants are coming in, all the same things are entering the water that could impact the pH, but instead of the pH being impossible to balance, the total alkalinity absorbs all of the bumps that come from that, and the pH stays where it's supposed to. If for some reason your alkalinity or your pH is out of balance, it's too high, it's too low, whatever might happen, BioGuard offers a whole line of balancing chemicals. If you have your water tested through Alex will give you very specific amounts of each chemical that's needed and how to add it to the pool. So just know that if something does get out of balance, it's easy enough to fix it and get your pool back to where it's supposed to be. The third balancing parameter that we need to look at, we've looked at pH, we've looked at alkalinity. Now let's talk a little bit about calcium. Calcium is really important in water balance, but it's not something that you have to balance very often. So it's important to know what your calcium reading is. If it's too low, you'll see a lot of damage that can happen to pool surfaces. You can see on the left-hand side there, that's actually a plaster surface that the plaster is being eaten away because there's not enough calcium in the water, and the water's looking to get some more calcium, and it's finding it in the surface of the pool. On the right-hand side, that pool probably has too much calcium in it. Water cannot hold on to it, so it's letting go of the excess calcium and causing cloudy water. So both of these reasons, low and high calcium, are why we want to take a look at what the calcium hardness reading is and make sure that it stays balanced. So one thing is very important. If you have too much calcium in the water, you cannot remove it. It's stuck in there. You have to deal with it. But we have products that will help you keep cloudy water from happening and keep your pool clean and clear. So in order to balance your calcium hardness, you've got two options. If it's too low, you're going to add a product called Balance Pack 300. And again, Alex is going to tell you exactly how much of that you need to add. If the calcium level is too high, you're going to add a product called Scale Inhibitor. And Scale Inhibitor is something that you would add once a month in order to go in, hold on to the excess calcium, and keep it from falling out of solution and causing your water to be cloudy. So we definitely want to keep excess calcium in solution. You can see the filters that are on this slide. The filter to the left is in a pool that has too much calcium in it, and it's not staying in solution. So it's depositing on the filter, it's causing a problem, and eventually this is going to lead to reduced filtration, cloudy water, and a lot of other issues. So the scale inhibitor doesn't remove the calcium, but it hangs on to it so it can't fall out of solution and cause problems. So calcium too low, you're adding Balance Pack 300 according to Alex's instructions. Calcium too high, you're adding scale inhibitor on a monthly basis in order to hang on to that calcium and keep it from causing a problem. Since we've been talking about water balance and kind of what that can do to the quality of your water, let's take just a minute to talk about cloudy water. Cloudy water is probably the most common issue that pool owners run into. There's a lot of different reasons why water can turn cloudy. Your filter's not working properly, your water's out of balance, etc. You don't have enough sanitizer. So there's a lot of different reasons why water can turn cloudy, but it's usually pretty easy to clear it up. These two products, Polysheen Blue and Natural Clarifier, are great additions to your pool in order to clear up a cloudy water problem. Or you can use them as a maintenance product once a week in order to help keep your water from going cloudy if you did have some sort of an issue. So they're two different products. They do kind of the same thing. They're both called water clarifiers. And basically what they do is they take small particles that are in your pool that might otherwise pass through your filter, and they clump them together into bigger particles, bigger molecules, bigger clumps of dirt and debris, so that instead of passing through the filter, then the dirt and debris gets stuck on the filter. So you're physically removing contamination and things that could cause cloudy water if they were left unchecked in the water, and you're using these products to help get that dirt and debris out more effectively. So Natural Clarifier and Polysheen Blue, they're very different products. They work in different ways, but the end result is basically the same. Take smaller particles, clumps them into bigger particles so that your filter can then physically remove what's causing the water to be cloudy. Another water balance parameter to consider is the phosphate level in your pool. High phosphate levels will lead to problems keeping your water clear, and it leads to just increased overall maintenance. It takes more chemicals to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish when your phosphate level is high in the pool. Removing phosphates periodically will make your maintenance easier, and it'll make all of your chemicals more effective. Now, this is something that Alex is going to test for you and then give you a recommendation for removing phosphates if necessary. Pool Tonic is a really good phosphate remover. So if you get a recommendation for phosphates to be removed from your pool, it's very likely that Pool Tonic is the product that you'll be using. Just a note, when you first put that in, you will see your pool cloud a little bit as the product starts to do its job. It clears up very quickly, but you'll see that it clouds just temporarily while the Pool Tonic starts to remove the phosphates. In addition from removing phosphate from the pool, Pool Tonic's also really good at removing pollution and pollen, dirt, dust, skin oil, greases, lotions, all sorts of things that could otherwise cause your pool to become cloudy. It's really good at removing pet dander, and if any of you allow your dogs to swim in your pool, one dog is equal to about 50 human swimmers. Now, we're not saying don't let them in there. Dogs love to swim, or some dogs do anyway, and it's perfectly fine to let them swim in your pool. Just be aware that you are going to have a bit of a higher bather load, more contaminants being introduced to the pool, and a product like Pool Tonic can go a long way to help remove those contaminants and keep your pool clean and clear.